Damian Cross was the architect, Eli Vance the planner, Marcus Thorne the ghost in the system, and Lana Red the enforcer. Together they built an invisible empire beneath New York City, an underground syndicate so silent, so flawless, it thrived, just inches below the feet of millions. But when one vanished, one betrayed, and another turned up dead, the tunnels they ruled became a tomb of secrets, and the city above had no idea what was coming next. In the heart of Brooklyn, where the streets pulse with life and the noise never seems to stop, something darker was taking root just below the surface. Not in the alleyways or abandoned buildings, but deeper, under the ground. Beneath the trains, the subways, and the feet of millions, a silent empire was growing. It was led by a man named Damian Cross, a former subway maintenance worker with a past buried as deep as the tunnels he once patrolled. Damian wasn't your typical gang leader. He didn't crave the spotlight, didn't walk around flashing wealth or power. He was a planner, a strategist, someone who saw opportunity in the places others ignored. After spending years working in New York's underbelly, Damian realized something. There were entire sections of the city's underground that had been abandoned, forgotten, or simply lost to time. And in those places, there were no cameras, no police patrols, no curious eyes, just space to build. He started small, a weapons stash hidden behind a sealed access panel in a decommissioned tunnel, a drug lab set up in a ventilation shaft. No one had touched since the late 1970s. Bit by bit, he created a network. But he knew he couldn't do it alone. He needed people, specialists who could help him turn the underground into something more than a hideout. He called his crew the Strayers because they had all strayed from something, from law, from society, from normal life. There was Lana Red, an explosives expert who had learned her skills dismantling mines overseas before falling into the black market. She was quiet, focused, and deadly. Damian trusted her with the most sensitive jobs, creating hidden entrances, rigging emergency exits with traps, and controlling who had access to which part of the tunnel network. Then came Eli Vance, a disgraced city planner who had once worked for the Department of Transportation. Fired after a scandal involving missing public funds, Eli was bitter and brilliant. He had blueprints, decades worth of maps, schematics, and tunnel overlays. More importantly, he knew how to read them. He became the architect of their underground world, plotting escape routes and designing bunkers so well hidden even the city didn't know they existed. Finally, there was Marcus Thorne, the tech mastermind. A former cybersecurity analyst, he had been caught stealing federal data but had avoided jail through a plea deal. Disillusioned, he vanished, until Damian found him. With Marcus running surveillance, hacking into street cameras, and wiping digital traces, the Strayers became invisible. Within a year, Damian's operation stretched beneath Brooklyn, Queens, and parts of Manhattan. Drugs moved through pipelines and forgotten shafts. Guns were assembled and shipped using underground freight lifts. Cash was laundered through digital wallets accessed in Wi-Fi dead zones below the city, and all of it was protected by the silence of concrete and steel. To the outside world, there were no signs, no gang wars, no graffiti, no flashy violence. Just whispers. Warehouse owners mentioned unexplained losses. Officers on patrol said some alleys felt wrong, too quiet, too clean. And a few homeless men who used the subways at night told stories of shadows moving in places no one should be. Then, one night, something happened. A warehouse in Queens, used by a rival cartel, was hit. Security systems showed nothing. No alarms. No video footage. Just an empty building and $3 million worth of fentanyl gone. The only clue? A broken floor panel in the far corner of the basement. Beneath it, a tunnel. That was when the NYPD started asking questions. Detective Irene Cole was assigned to the case. A seasoned officer known for her precision and persistence, Cole didn't believe in dead ends. She began tracing patterns, digging into old maps, questioning people the department had long since written off. And slowly, she began to see a thread. Meanwhile, Damian and the Strayers continued to expand. They had no idea they were being watched. No idea that someone was beginning to piece together the invisible lines that connected their empire. But there was a greater danger forming, not above them, in the city, but within. A silent fracture. Because in building something so vast and hidden, Damian had given up control, and not everyone underground shared the same loyalty. The empire beneath the streets was growing fast, but it was also becoming unstable. And once the foundations begin to crack, it's only a matter of time before everything comes crashing down. The robbery in Queens was the first real trace of the Strayers' underground movement. To most, it seemed like a one-off job, clean and silent. But for Detective Irene Cole, it was a sign of something far more calculated. The broken floor panel, tucked away in a neglected corner of the warehouse, revealed a tunnel that wasn't listed on any modern maps. It wasn't just a forgotten passage. It had been recently modified. Reinforced walls, fresh marks on the floor, and airflow systems suggested it had been used regularly. This wasn't a fluke. It was a route. A passage, in and out, buried in plain sight. Cole had been in law enforcement for over a decade, and her instincts told her that this wasn't the work of a small-time crew. She began digging through public records, city archives, and forgotten infrastructure logs. The patterns she uncovered pointed toward a network of decommissioned subway lines and utility tunnels that should have been sealed years ago. But someone had reopened them. At the same time, the atmosphere inside the Strayers' ranks began to shift. Damian Cross, normally calm and controlled, was becoming increasingly tense. Though the robbery had gone off without a hitch, he had noticed something troubling. A small access terminal in one of their security rooms had been tampered with. It was subtle, a data log wiped clean. But Damian didn't believe in coincidences. He ordered Marcus Thorne to investigate. Marcus worked through the night, combing through encrypted logs and backup drives. What he found made his stomach tighten. A foreign signal had accessed their surveillance system. Not from the outside, but from within the network. Someone had breached their security, logged in, and extracted data. The breach had happened weeks before the Queen's job. Someone had been watching them. Damian brought the team together in their main control room, a dimly lit chamber deep beneath an abandoned station in Brooklyn. He said nothing about the signal at first. Instead, he spoke of tightening protocols, reducing external jobs, and shifting storage locations. But Lana Red noticed the change in his tone. She had worked with Damian long enough to know when he was hiding something. A week later, Lana disappeared. She had been assigned to reinforce an entry point in a tunnel system near the East River. It was supposed to be a simple task, but when Marcus tried to contact her, there was no response. Her last known location showed her checking into the job site, but there was no exit log. When a team was sent to check the area, they found her equipment left behind, neatly packed, untouched. At first, the gang believed she had gone rogue, maybe even flipped, but Damian wasn't convinced. Lana had been loyal for years. She never questioned orders, never acted on her own. Her disappearance, following the security breach, felt deliberate. Too neat, too sudden. Tension within the Strayers began to rise. Eli Vance, the gang's architect, voiced concerns about the growing risk. He had always preferred to work behind the scenes, studying blueprints and redesigning routes. But now he was being asked to burn access points, reroute entire supply lines, and erase digital footprints that had taken months to construct. Marcus Thorne was under pressure as well. He was still tracing the signal that had breached their system, but every path led to dead ends. Whoever had done it knew what they were doing. They had used ghost accounts, VPN relays, and deep-layer masking software, techniques only someone highly skilled could manage. That's when Marcus started to suspect the unthinkable. The breach wasn't from an outsider. It had to be someone on the inside. Someone with access. Someone who knew the system. Damian's trust in his crew began to collapse. He ordered background checks, questioned loyalties, and quietly moved sensitive materials from their primary bunker. He knew someone was working against him. He just didn't know who. Detective Cole, meanwhile, had made her first major breakthrough. Through months of digging, she had discovered a name, Eli Vance. It appeared in multiple city planning records, tied to tunnel blueprints that had been mysteriously altered or withdrawn. She cross-referenced this with data from the Queen's job and found a shocking overlap. The escape route used matched a design Vance had filed nearly 12 years ago. Cole now had her first solid lead, but as she moved closer to the truth, so did the danger. The deeper she went into the city's forgotten layers, the clearer it became. The Strayers weren't just operating underground, they were surviving there, hiding in a place where law, reason, and safety didn't exist. And Lana Red, whether a traitor or a victim, was now just the beginning. Lana Red's body was found 3 weeks after her disappearance. It surfaced in a sewage canal near Harlem, bloated and lifeless. There were no obvious signs of trauma, no bullet holes, no stab wounds. Just her corpse, stripped of all gear, with a folded piece of paper taped to her chest. The note said only, "She knew." The message hit the Strayers like a hammer. Damian Cross stared at the words for hours, locked in silence. He didn't speak to anyone, didn't issue orders. For the first time since forming the gang, he seemed rattled. He had built his empire on control, on silence, on systems that worked flawlessly. But now a ghost was moving through his network, eliminating his most trusted people. He convened a private meeting with Marcus Thorne and Eli Vance. The bunker's steel doors were bolted shut, communications cut off. Only the three of them remained inside. Damian wanted answers. Marcus delivered the latest findings first. The data breach had originated from a portable device, an external drive plugged directly into their system, bypassing firewalls. This wasn't remote hacking. Someone had been physically present in the bunker. Eli, quiet and cautious, grew pale. He hadn't said much since Lana's disappearance, but now he spoke up. He reminded Damian that their entire system was only accessible to a handful of members. Access was restricted. Every console was protected. Whoever had done this wasn't just inside their organization. They were one of them. Damian's mind turned to suspicion. He questioned Marcus, demanded his access logs, then turned to Eli, wanted his movement records. The meeting descended into blame. Voices rose, fingers pointed, until Marcus stormed out. Eli followed, leaving Damian alone with Lana's note in his hand. Days passed, and paranoia spread through the tunnels. Damian ordered full security sweeps. Entry points were sealed. All communications had to go through encrypted terminals, and movement was restricted. Trust among the Strayers began to fracture. Members accused each other in whispers. Some simply disappeared. Meanwhile, Detective Irene Cole had grown closer than ever. Eli Vance's name had unlocked a trail of documents, hidden planning files, and city contracts linked to projects that never existed. One in particular stood out. A sealed train station deep beneath Manhattan that had supposedly been closed due to structural instability. Yet when Cole visited the location, she found evidence of recent activity: fresh tire marks, power usage, and scattered footprints. She put together a special task force. Their mission was clear: map the underground, locate access points, and prepare for a raid. They called it Operation Deep Lock, a name chosen for the secrecy and depth of the mission. But they were racing against time. Inside the tunnels, Marcus Thorne discovered something he hadn't expected. While tracing back the device that had accessed the system, he stumbled upon a hidden subnetwork, buried in the code, separated from the main server. It was full of surveillance footage, tunnel maps, movement records. But it wasn't created by Damian. It had been running independently, possibly for months. The footage revealed a shocking truth. Eli Vance had been secretly recording everything: movement logs, delivery schedules, meeting footage. He had even recorded Damian sleeping. It wasn't clear when he had started or why, but it was clear now. Eli had been documenting the entire operation. For who? Marcus didn't know. But he realized the threat wasn't from outside. It was Eli. Marcus confronted Damian immediately, but the leader was already spiraling. His empire was collapsing, and his judgment clouded by rage and grief. He refused to believe Eli was a traitor. Eli had built the tunnels, shaped their routes, kept them hidden. Without him, there was no empire. But then Eli vanished. He left no trace. His room was cleared out, his equipment gone. A single message left behind on a shattered screen. Sometimes, the architect must bury the building. Panic set in. Damian called for an emergency lockdown. All exits sealed, all systems frozen. But it was too late. Without Eli's guidance, many of the tunnels became inaccessible. Paths shut off, power grids failed, and critical escape routes collapsed. Detective Cole received an anonymous tip, coordinates to a location deep under Wall Street. With her team, she prepared for entry. The final strike was coming, but what waited below was no longer a gang. It was a decaying machine, falling in on itself. And someone, Eli or someone else, was watching it all from the shadows. Detective Irene Cole led her task force into the dark just after midnight. Armed with thermal scanners, underground maps, and months of intelligence, they descended into the depths beneath Wall Street. The tunnel they entered had once been part of a freight line, sealed off since the 1960s. Now it served as the last known route into the heart of the Strayers' empire. Every step forward brought them deeper into a decaying world few knew existed. The air was thick with moisture and the hum of long-abandoned infrastructure. But it wasn't empty. They passed fresh boot prints, discarded food wrappers, even the charred remains of a small fire. Someone had been there, recently, inside the collapsing structure of the Strayers. Chaos had taken hold. Without Eli Vance, the system he had built was crumbling. Marcus Thorne fought to maintain control, rerouting power to essential chambers, restoring communications, and trying to locate Damian Cross. But Damian had vanished. In the wake of Eli's betrayal and disappearance, Damian had withdrawn into the oldest part of the network, a series of tunnels beneath an unfinished 1930s subway expansion. It was where he had first begun building the Strayers. Surrounded by dust-covered blueprints and rusted tools, Damian sat alone, watching the monitors flicker and fail, one by one. He had come to realize something chilling. Eli hadn't just betrayed them. He had planned it from the start. Everything, the route maps, the hidden exits, the security layers, had been designed by Eli with quiet precision. He had built the tunnels to be functional, yes, but also controllable. And now, with Damian isolated and Marcus overwhelmed, Eli was pulling strings from somewhere in the dark. The police task force reached a chamber they hadn't expected. An armory, half flooded, lined with crates of weapons, explosives, and forged documents. Cole called it in, marking it as a central supply depot. As they pushed deeper, they found more signs of organized collapse. Doors welded shut from the outside, cameras turned inward, sections rigged to collapse at the push of a button. It was a trap, but not for them. It was a burial ground. For the Strayers, Eli Vance had spent years recording everything. And now, from a separate location, unknown to anyone, he was dismantling it all, tunnel by tunnel, room by room. Not with firepower or police raids, but with silence. He wasn't destroying the Strayers to run from justice. He was destroying them to erase history. Damian finally emerged from hiding, ragged and gaunt, and made his way back to the main terminal. He found Marcus waiting, surrounded by flickering screens and the buzzing sound of dying circuits. The bunker's systems were failing, the temperature dropping. Marcus had pieced together the truth as well. Eli had never planned to escape with wealth or power. He wanted a clean end. No records, no arrests, no legacy. Damian, desperate and disoriented, tried to send a signal. One last broadcast through their encrypted channel. He wanted to speak directly to Cole, not to negotiate, not to fight. Just to explain, but the signal never reached her, because Eli had already cut the line. The task force finally reached the central chamber, where Marcus remained alone. He didn't resist. There was nothing left to protect. As they placed him in custody, Cole asked just one question. Why? Marcus, defeated, offered only this. You're standing in a graveyard. He built it just for us. A week later, Damian's body was found, collapsed against a control panel deep beneath the old subway works. The cause of death was dehydration and exhaustion. He had sealed himself in with the last functioning doors, as if refusing to let go of the world he created. Authorities never found Eli Vance. The footage of him leaving the compound showed him walking through a side tunnel, closing a steel door behind him, and vanishing into the dark. No trail, no digital footprint, nothing. The NYPD closed Operation Deep Lock, sealing off the tunnels permanently. Cole filed her final report. Subject: the Strayers. Status: dismantled. Leadership: deceased or missing. Operational threat: neutralized. But in the final pages, she added a personal note. Some empires don't fall with war or fire. Some are swallowed by the very shadows they were born in. We didn't destroy the Strayers. One of their own did. And he made sure no one could ever build it again. Above ground, New York continued to move, unaware of the ghost network that had once pulsed beneath its feet. But the story of the Strayers lived on, in sealed reports, in urban legends, and in the silent tunnels where an empire had once ruled, unseen and unstoppable, until it vanished.